Joe, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I think our viewers are going to be very interested to hear of your career and your passions, so we're going to get right into it. So take me back to your earlier years. Did you know what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I pretty much did.
Good.
I pretty much did. I think from when I was a kid, I pretty much wanted to accomplish certain things. I wanted to be in boxing. I love boxing. I love to fight. I mean, I grew up in boxing. So that was always a desire of mine, always dreaming. And as far as being a lawyer, I guess I did because it got drilled in my head when I was young. I told my mother I was going to be a race car driver and a garbage man, because I used to like the garbage truck going back. And she said, no, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Oh, okay. That was your choice?
That was my choice.
Okay. All right. So tell me a little bit about growing up and what was your family involved in and the boxing, etc.
Well, I grew up in the Bronx in a good neighborhood area.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up basically in boxing. My father was a pro. My uncle was a pro. So everything I knew about when I was a kid was boxing. Grew up going to the gyms just about every day from when I was like 5 years old,
Wow.
6 years old. I remember knowing when I was 5 because I was in kindergarten.
Oh.
And I could associate the times.
Now, your other friends in kindergarten didn't box.
Not in kindergarten, but at about maybe starting about age 7 or 8, I think like second grade, around there, third grade, we used to come back home to the basement and box at lunchtime. My school I was at PS 83, and it was 2 blocks from my house, maybe close to 2.5 blocks. So we used to either go home and play basketball on my court because we were younger than the older kids and we couldn't get the court in the schoolyard, or at times we'd box.
Okay. So did everyone get back to class?
Yeah, we got back all right. We got back all right.
Okay. So when did you start competitively getting involved in boxing?
Again, as early as I can remember. I mean, maybe 7 or 8 years old. About 7 or 8, they used to have something called smokers, and we used to go and basically fight. And you'd line up and they'd pick you. Okay, you and you, put the gloves on, and you fight. And they were in dingy places with smoke all over the place. That's what they call smokers. In bad neighborhoods, all over the place, Bronx, Brooklyn, Harlem. And we used to just go and you box, you get a good experience.
You have good memories.
A lot of good memories from it. Yes, a lot of good memories.
Okay. So then you got through school, and then what happened after high school?
Well, I boxed like all the time through grammar school and then junior high school and stuff like that. And high school as well. We had Junior Olympics. We had a lot of tournaments and stuff. Started getting more involved in tournament type stuff. And just progressed. I mean, I was good at it. I liked it.
So what happened professionally as you decided to be a boxer, then go to law school? How did this all work?
No, I always was going to school. I remember sometimes I'd go to the fights and I'd be waiting because you have to wait. You get there a couple hours early, and I'd have my school book. Sometimes I have to read my book. And always was in school and always boxing. I mean, everything I remember. Look, I had a regular childhood also. I mean, I was, playing stickball on the streets and, football on the street. And
Okay, but then tell me a little bit about how you got to law school. I know you said your mother said doctor or lawyer, but give us a little more context there.
It was a whole bunch of things. Like my father also wanted me to go to school. He was a former fighter. My uncle was a former fighter. Both of them didn't like the business of boxing. They didn't like boxing. They always felt if you could do something else, you should. So they pushed me to school. Also, my father wanted me to go to school. My father always wanted me to be a lawyer because he felt like, the lawyers took all the money. So that was his joke all the time, you know. My father was, you know, he grew up in the streets, my father. No real education, you know, did well, worked hard, boxed as a pro, and had a couple of stores in the neighborhood and things like that. But, you know, he liked the idea and always treasured the idea of getting an education. You know, so I guess I was always desirous of, you know, doing that because of that.
So you always knew you were going to go to school? Or
Yeah, I always knew I was going to go to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you made the decision to be a lawyer?
Yeah, like when I was young, I always was saying I wanted to be a lawyer, you know. I remember it was, you know, neighborhood, like not neighborhood, but like maybe aunts or uncles. Everybody says they're going to be a lawyer, you know. But I always thought and wanted to be a lawyer. I remember I went to public school for grammar school. I went to PS 83, junior high school 127. But there were friends of mine who had gone to the Catholic school system, and they always talked about Fordham Prep, you know, and how, you know, it was a great school, the whole bit, and I could never get in it because I came from public school, you know. So like that was like something that drove me to get to Fordham Prep. So I always wanted to go to Fordham Prep for high school, and that's what I ended up doing, you know, because I just wanted to go because they kept talking about it. You know?
Oh, that's a
I
good
didn't know
reason.
anything else. So I went to Fordham, and then you know, everything just kept going. Fordham Prep, Fordham University, you know, and I kept pursuing the idea of becoming an attorney.
Okay.
So I did.
Okay.
But I boxed the whole way through.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about how you did all that, and you won
Yeah.
a major. Tell us what you won during law school.
Well, in law school, I won the Golden Gloves, the New York Golden Gloves, 147-pound open class. You know, did it during an Olympic year, which is, you know, a tough year to do it. That's when everybody's really competing, and it was, you know, it was a fulfillment of a nice dream.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. Family loved it. My father was in the Golden Gloves, and he had gotten silver, and my uncle also, they got silver. So they never got the championship, you know. So they loved it. You know, it was important to them. It was good for them. It was rewarding.
How did you go to law school and win this? Law school's a full-time job.
Yeah, it was work. I remember I was fighting for the U.S. team at the time also, and I remember I went to Norway to fight. And I came back, you know, from the tournament and stuff, and I got back at around, I think we got in like 6:30 in the morning or something, and I had to take a final exam that day at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh my!
That was tough, you know. That was tough.
Wow.
But yeah, it was different. It was different. It was good though. You know, when you're busy, I
Yes.
think you get more done.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
you're disciplined. You do what you have to do. You're training in the morning. You know, going to school in the day. You know, you're basically run in the morning, go to school in the day, come back and go to the gym and stuff. But it keeps you disciplined, so you get a lot more done.
So, you graduated from law school, and then what happened?
Graduated from law school, and then I went to work for the district attorney's office in the Bronx. Great job. You get thrown right into the fire. Yeah, right into the fire. And the practice of law is, you know, in trying cases is very much like boxing. You know, very, very similar. You know, you have there's tactical, there's physical, there's preparation. You know, there's a lot involved that is similar, you know. And it's you alone, which makes boxing such a special sport. And the same thing as an attorney. Look, I mean, you always have a team around you. In boxing, it's very important who your trainer is, who your manager, promoter if you turn pros, things like that. Those are important factors. But when that bell rings, you're in the ring alone. You know, now it's up to you. And very similar in trial work. You know, you have your support staff, you have your paralegals. You know, you have if you're a prosecutor, the detectives, if you're a defense attorney at the time, maybe your investigators, and you get information and things like that. But when you go into that courtroom, you got to perform. You gotta be there. You gotta have done your homework and studied and be prepared. And I found them similar in that regard. Years ago, when I was boxing, and it carried over a lot in my life, in everything I do, but particularly as a lawyer, but in everything. I asked my father once, I was training, and in boxing, when you get up in the morning and run, it's a lonely thing. And I used to notice that a lot of the trainers used to get up and go with their fighter, with their cars, and drive along them while they were jogging and running, or a bicycle or whatever it might be. I asked my father once, how come you don't do that for me? I get up in the morning, I run. Other guys, they have their trainer, goes on a bike with them. And my father told me something which really, I don't, maybe he didn't look at it as being that poignant at the time, but to me it really resonated in everything I do. Because he told me, he said, listen, those guys do that to make sure that their fighter really ran.
Oh,
okay?
That was a wonderful thing for him to say to you.
Yeah, and he said, if you don't run, it's only going to hurt you when you get in that ring some point in time in the future. And it may not happen in this fight, but it'll happen in the fight down the line. So it's up to you to be disciplined. You're not pulling the wool over my eyes. And for them, that's how they do their business. Me, I trust in you. And if you don't do it, you're going to suffer.
That was a nice moment.
It was, because, you don't really, like I'm listening to it and stuff like that, and I'm just thinking, you're still not coming, and I'm still getting up alone. But when you reflect on it and think back about it, it really had an impact on my life, because I looked at things that way. There's no shortcuts. And if you try to pull the wool over somebody else's eyes, you're only going to affect yourself down the line, because you're cheating yourself.
Absolutely. I think it seems like one complemented the other. The training in one complemented the law, and the law complemented the
Absolutely. Yeah, it really did. It really did. And that carried on throughout, throughout. And you develop a certain kind of character, and that character helps you in life. And that is, boxing has helped me a lot in those regards.
Well, it sounds, they just work so well
They
together.
intertwined well.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
They certainly did.
Very, very nice. So then you were in the DA's office for how long?
4 years.
Okay. And then what happened?
Well, while I was in the DA's office, I thought I was done with boxing. I finished my career. I stopped right when I graduated law school. Had to make a decision. I had so many people. Even before that, I had a bad car accident when I was 17 years old. I had an accident in 2012.
Yes.
But when I was young, in 1983, I was training. I was with the boxing team and stuff like that, and I had a bad car accident. A tree jumped in front of my cousin's car, Yeah. and so I landed through the windshield and everything, because I was in the passenger seat. And it stalled my boxing career for a while. And in fact, when you look back on life, you never know why things happen, because I was getting so many offers to turn pro or fight, and and it was big money offers, and then I got into that accident, and I was laid up for 3 years. I couldn't really box. I had to come back later again when I ended up winning the Golden Gloves and stuff like that while I was in law school. But who knows what would have happened, because when you're younger and you're getting all of those offers, and I was 17 at the time, so you never know. Maybe I wouldn't have finished law school. Maybe the temptation would have been too great. I came out of law school, and I thought I was retired with my boxing career now. And fighters that I had known were asking me for help and advice. I had gone to law school. I was the only one really that went to law school and had boxed. And while I was in the DA's office, I started managing and training some fighters, particularly one fighter. And he ended up becoming a world champion. It was my first fight, and we got into the world championship. And part and parcel with that was when I was doing that, it was hard to get him fights. He was a good southpaw. Nobody wanted to fight southpaws. And so I had to put on my own shows to try to move him.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to promoting. And so I started promoting a little bit while I was in the DA's office.
Oh, so you were doing two things.
Two things,
That
yeah,
was-
right at the end.
yeah, that's very popular now.
1992, yeah. I was juggling
Yeah.
the same way like in the past,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
with boxing and
Right. Did
and
they
school.
know, or did
Yeah,
it matter?
my office
Oh, it's
knew.
okay.
Yeah, office knew. But one time I took a vacation, not a vacation, but used my vacation
Yes,
time.
Yes.
I went to go train down in Florida
Yes.
with one of the fighters, and and there was a robbery taking place, and we foiled it, okay, down in Florida, and from this like a gas station type of thing. So I go back, I think nothing of it, we give information to the police because they caught the guys and stuff like that, and I get called in by, what's going on? Like what are you doing? Because they wanted me as a witness now down in Florida, and they had to call the DA's office.
Funny.
Yeah. But it was always on my time, and yes, I had, I advised them the kind of that I was doing that on, as well. But they were good. The office was great. And then when I came out of the office, I went into private practice. I opened my own law firm and practiced law, but I also was taking care of boxes, at the same time, and building the boxing, career, and it just grew. My law practice grew very well. Was doing very well, but sometimes I was I'd have my like a major client on hold in a big case while I'm taking care of a 4-round fight for $400.
That's
so,
funny.
Yeah, but that's my love was in boxing. I loved it, so I pursued it.
Okay. So what are you doing now?
Now I still have a law firm.
Okay.
But most of my business is boxing, for the most part.
Okay.
Like before, I'm still juggling, right? I'm getting up early in the morning, going for that run, right? It's not a run now, it's work.
Okay.
Getting back, going to the gym, but that's work again. And just, promoting events, promoting fights, promoting fighters, trying to build them. It's a rewarding thing. It's brutal work, but it's like training for a fight. It's a rough process, but it's rewarding when you can put on an event, make it successful, bring people joy by being able to be at an event like that and enjoy it and have fun and make sure the fans have a real experience. And ultimately, it's something special when you can take somebody who, grew up, with a dream, and make him champion of the world. Have it where he had no money and now all of a sudden he's got real money, and can support his family. So those are rewarding things, and it makes it worthwhile. So the hard work,
Yes, it
pays
pays
off.
off.
Yeah.
But you got back to your passion.
I got to my
More.
passion, yeah.
You found a way to
Yeah,
integrate.
I guess it found me, It's like, you ever see The Godfather?
Yes.
Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. That's
Well,
boxing for
you
me.
didn't let it go.
Yeah, I didn't let it go.
You didn't let it go. So there was some very interesting remarks I heard you made in other podcasts or things I wrote about what happens in the boxing gym and about that it transcends and there's respect for one another regardless where you come from. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, it's what I believe about boxing. It's the ultimate melting pot. People used to say about New York is a melting pot. Boxing is the real ultimate melting pot. Boxing, it transcends life. I mean, first of all, you have struggles of life. You have one day it's raining, the next day it's
nice.
beautiful. Exactly. Boxing's like that. One day you get hit, the next second you're hitting them. But boxing gyms, it's really a special thing to see. In a boxing gym, you can have, and in a fight also, in a show, when you go to a boxing show, you'll have somebody with money, next to somebody who's poor. you'll have somebody who's white next to somebody who's black, somebody who's Italian next to the Irish. I mean, all the things that you would think are oil and water.
Divisive. Now they're together.
They're not. They're together. And it's something special. It really is. You don't see that kind of animosity.
You mentioned somewhere that it should be taught at colleges.
I believe it should be taught in high schools, in grammar school, but certainly colleges. I mean, it used to be years ago. But boxing develops character. It teaches discipline, determination, hard work. It's a cerebral sport in a lot of respects. You're not going to just be strong and think you're going to go out there and throw punches. You got to learn it. Like life, you got to learn things in life. So I do believe boxing should be taught. I think it teaches many, many valuable life lessons. And I don't think it's bad to learn self-defense either. To be able to use your hands.
It's not going to hurt you.
No, it's not going to hurt. And I think kids, should know that. Should know how to protect themselves and use their hands. And I also think that when you do know how to protect yourself, do know how to use your hands properly, you don't use them as much because you don't need to. You don't have to prove anything. And I think that's an important factor, an important thing to have in life.
Well, I think you'd be the perfect person. And you had some challenges. There was another accident you had, correct?
Yes. No, I've been through some accidents. Two major car accidents.
Yes.
So the first one I told you, I was 17, and that tree jumped in front of my cousin's car, right?
Okay.
Second one, I was driving on the Long Island Expressway, and I had a 60-on-60 head-on collision with a guy that was going the wrong way on the Long Island Expressway. He hit me head-on.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it was an experience, troubling. He was a young kid. He was 23, drinking, no license, things like that. So it was unfortunate. He died in the accident, which was it's a tough situation.
Absolutely.
I was very fortunate, but I had a reporter come into the hospital to see me, and you really see the impact because she was crying when she interviewed me.
Oh.
Because the first time she did an interview, she was on the tour of accidents. First time she did an interview with the guy who was not at fault, who survived.
Oh.
Because most of the time, the guys that weren't at fault died.
Those are the ones.
And so she was. It was something different, to see. But I was blessed. I was blessed. I attribute a lot of that to a lot of different reasons. Obviously, somebody up there was looking out for me.
Somebody was looking out for you.
I had a good car. I had a nice car that was,
Strong.
well protective. Yeah. But we got thrown 200 feet. The car spun around 30
God.
times, whatever it was. Bad accident. It was a miracle, really, in some respects. But it's wild. I come back to boxing because to me, boxing gave me the perseverance to get out of that car. I thought that car was going to blow up. It was weird. And the guy had to pull the door open. Smoke was coming. It was a real scene. And get to the side of the road and things like that. When I was in the hospital, I couldn't. I mean, in the gurney. Once they put me in the gurney, I couldn't move at all. But it gave me the strength to know to push when I was in the hospital, because they had told me it was going to take me a long time to walk again. And I told them, "What are you talking about?" And I made them stand me up every 45 minutes to try to walk. And they were getting annoyed. But I felt, what do you mean I can't walk? And what do you mean I can't remember how to walk? And I'm going to have to learn again. The accident was a couple days ago. I can walk. Because they get worried about atrophy setting in and things like that. So I kept doing, and I walked out of the hospital in 2 days.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I kept pushing. Now, I was in pain. It hurt. I had the morphine and, you have the drip and stuff, and, I wasn't taking it, so I go as far as I can go without, until there was too much pain, And then when I would stand up, it was very difficult. And in the beginning, in the very beginning, they had to catch me. I fell back. And then, like, little steps, the toes, you could move your toes a little, things like that. But I kept pushing. And, I felt, from the boxing training and stuff like that.
Yes.
Just that, knowledge that you got to push yourself in life, and when you're training, you push. And that's what I did. And I credit my fast recovery to the fact that I had, developed a certain kind of discipline or character from boxing.
Well, you were trained for so many years to do what you had to do.
Exactly.
That's quite a story.
Yeah.
So you truly are a champion, as they say.
We try,
champion
right?
as a boxer, a lawyer, overcoming life's challenges. I can't thank you enough for spending time with me this evening. It's been a pleasure. I think my viewers are going to love hearing about this interview from you, personal experiences, and how you had a passion and you had training and you also pursued an educational degree, and how you kind of all put it together. So thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate being here. And look, it's humbling to hear you say that, because like my experiences with boxing, I love people, of being there. The other day they had the big fights down in Times Square. I went with everybody else in Times Square, just watching it. We had all the guys from the gym there and stuff like that. I wanted to stay with them,
Oh, good camaraderie.
So, when all is said and done, it's nice to hear. It's good stuff. But I am also happy just being in the trenches.
Well, thank you once again.